Welcome back. We have a flash update here for you today. We have the Canary Capital HBAR ETF, the spot ETF, just went live on NASDAQ today. We're going to take a look at some of the numbers around that, but I also have a longtime friend, a guest that I used to have on pretty much every week. Zep, welcome back, buddy.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going pretty good. So Zep is the Director of Ecosystem Development at the Hedera Foundation, right?
Yeah, so currently overseeing, anything as it relates to ecosystem on the marketing and BD side, working with the growth team, there's a large business development team that is focused on that specific ecosystem vertical. But as it relates to me, I'm looking at DeFi and other sort of on-chain use cases. You've got the TradFi team that are hyper-focused on institutions, enterprises, of course, still all on chain. But on the growth team, we're looking at those, sort of DeFi related activity, essentially.
Well, I have to give a huge hat tip to Greg Bell, Chief Business Officer there at the Hedera Foundation, who was working really hard on getting this ETF to market. Before we jump into some of the numbers here and how things are looking so far, what are your thoughts around the ETF launch?
Well, echoing your sentiments, all the flowers to Greg there, who spearheaded this relationship with Stephen McClurg and Canary Capital. He's been absolutely integral to this. He led off that first domino that led to now, 12 other ETFs that are filed that reference HBAR. And alongside Greg in those efforts is Blake on the finance team, Josh on the finance team, and of course, Charles at the helm there in terms of leadership. So really, really a cross-organizational effort there from the foundation. But of course, without the Hedera founders, without the Hedera network, without the Hedera council, that institutional grade angle that Hedera has and is known for also wouldn't be there. So this is a massive, massive development that has been in development since the launch of the network, if you really look that far back. So an exciting day for everyone involved, an exciting day for the community, and a massive, massive validation for Hedera, and of course its native utility token HBAR.
Well, one of the things that I have been preaching is that when we got to the point where we would have these ETFs, whether they're the spot ETFs like this or the basket ETFs, which we can talk about here in a little bit, I think that the type of investors that will be using these products, the HBAR and Hedera will resonate with them. These are going to be the early majority. You and I, Zep, and all the HBARbarians out there, we're the early adopters, right? We're getting to the point now where it's the early majority. We talk about crossing the chasm. That's what we're doing right now in the crypto space. And they're going to think of things a little bit differently. They weren't going to go into a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange and get these assets at spot. But once they're available within their brokerage firms, they are willing to go out and get involved at this point because it's just a lot easier for them. And I think that they're going to be a little bit older investors. That means they could have more capital. So older millennials, Generation X, boomers, things along those lines. And things like the enterprise adoption around Hedera, the general professionalism, the council, those are going to be the kind of things that resonate. And that was my theory, at least. And if we look at what's happening today, so I'm going to refresh real quick and take a look at what we're seeing as far as trading around the HBAR. I believe the assets under management had the price set at $25. That's what the price was before the market opened. And right now it looks like we're trading at a premium to that. And that's very good for the HBAR because that means to balance the books, Canary is going to have to go out there and buy additional HBAR. But if we look at, we are just over an hour since it's been trading and we are at 169,000 shares. So let me take a look. Well, actually, we can just go to and look at the Litecoin version, and the prices are similar because they both started at $25. We have Litecoin is trading at a little bit of a discount here, and they have 31,000 shares that have been traded compared to HBAR at 168,000 shares. So that means we're trading at a 6 or 7 to 1 ratio compared to Litecoin. So far, it's been much more successful. And I'm going to take a look at the dollar amount that's been traded so far. So far, we have about $5 million worth of HBAR that has been traded. And you can compare these if you take into consideration the ratios in market cap between how much was traded for Bitcoin in the first full day across all of the ETFs that launched, and then Hedera itself, or the HBAR ETF. And Bitcoin traded about 4.7 billion or $4.6 billion on that first day. Granted, the market cap was much lower for Bitcoin at the time, but if we compare the two, if we get over, 20 million, $30 million worth of volume today, I would say that's very successful. Even if we get over, 10, 12 million, and we've only had an hour of trading, of course, you're going to see more volume early in the day and then closer to the close. But the other thing you have to look at is how it's performing compared to the other altcoin ETF that's launching today, and that's Litecoin. Both of them have similar overall market caps, so they should have similar volume, but they don't. HBAR is trading significantly more, and that's certainly good. And it's also good to see that the HBAR ETF is trading at a premium. I'm going to stop there real quick, Zep. I'm not sure if you can talk about those kind of things, but I want to get your 2 cents as well.
For me, it's a real validation of why we came here in the first place. So many of us were attracted to the Hedera Council, to Lehman's, Harvard lectures, to Mike Maloney's Bitcoin to HBAR documentary. And I think this is almost coming full circle. We've got this new vehicle for HBAR. We've got a completely new type of sort of community base that can get involved, who exist not in the existing sort of crypto sphere, but in that traditional finance side. And I know if that I was in, the traditional finance side of the world, and I was looking into crypto for the first time, seeing those names on the councils would resonate with me, definitely. So I'm hoping, and it looks like we're seeing that early, at least in relation to us versus Litecoin, that it is resonating with those people. And I hope that it only continues to do that.
Yeah, well said and well covered. And I'm going to touch a little bit on the HBAR price. Right now, we are trading at about, let's see here, just about 20 cents. That's up 10% because we just heard about the ETF hitting yesterday, and that did have a market impact for the HBAR. We were trading as low as in the 17 handle yesterday, and we've seen about a 10% increase since then. Litecoin, on the other hand, is actually down on the day, even though they got the same news. They got a little bit of a bounce initially, and now they're continuing to pull back, and they're actually at a loss over the past 24 hours. We're still holding on to about that 10% gain. But overall, I think things are looking really good. Zeb, the other big piece of news that I was excited to see is you mentioned that there is an additional 11 ETFs, 12 all in total, that mention the HBAR in some way. 2 that came out last week that I was really excited about. We have an index product that's based off of the CoinDesk 20, and that's being put out by ProShares. And then we had another one filed by T. Rowe Price. So one of the oldest names on Wall Street is going to have an actively managed product. And even though these spot ETFs are going to be very important, because not only is it good to have the name recognition of HBAR getting out there, but it's also important in terms of allowing these other ETFs and other funds to include HBAR in those funds. So it could be kind of like a fund of funds and things like that, including for ETFs. But I think that these basketed products are going to be very critical going forward. I think that's where you're going to see the most inflows and could have, especially with HBAR, even more of an impact on our market than anything else. So, Zep, I'm curious, is there any talk around these basketed ETFs around the Hedera Foundation, or you can just talk about institutional capital and the impacts it could have on the Hedera ecosystem itself? So whichever direction you want to take it in.
For sure, yeah. I can't talk too much to investment or capital flows, but I can talk to the sort of attention side, right? As you mentioned, I believe there's 12 other ETFs that reference HBAR in their filings. 2 of those being additional sports ETFs, and just for HBAR, and the others being those basket goods. And I think what we're seeing today is another massive attention generating event for Hedera. You're seeing us trending, you're seeing us outperforming, you're seeing more and more people looking at Hedera and taking it seriously. And this serves 2 purposes, right? More people joining Hedera, getting exposure, joining the community, following us on that vision, on that enterprise side, on that institutional side. But it's also teeing us up, I believe, for a new user base to come in and start exploring these sort of institutional grade protocols that we have in the works. And I don't know if you've been seeing on the Hedera Foundation, I know you mentioned in your show, but the rest of the audience is at the foundation, we've been sort of laser focused on filling some ecosystem gaps so that when these new institutional grade DeFi protocols come online, we really have the best access as possible. And for me, with these HBAR ETFs, with this attention, we're going to get more and more people looking at that. And when I say these ecosystem gaps, before the foundation became Hedera Foundation, we didn't have any USDC support. Today we have Binance. Today we have Crypto.com. We have BitCub, and far, far beyond. There's 6 exchanges now, including the first and second highest by volume. That was a massive, massive piece of the puzzle that was missing, which has now been patched. Then you look at the bridges. We now have Layer 0 live, which is one of the, or if not the leading bridge at the moment, via Stargate, their sort of front-facing UI with wrapped Ethereum and new assets to come. And then you have Axelar, who announced that we're now live on Axelar, I believe, yesterday. When you take into consideration those foundations, the increased access that will enable for users to come over, when the attention brings them here, and you combine that with some of the protocols that are being built on the institutional grade DeFi side, I believe all of this is sort of coming together to really get the momentum behind us, behind those protocols, behind DeFi on Hedera, and that this ETF is just the start of that institutional interest and that institutional grade sort of activity on the network. So for me, this is an announcement that has many, many more network effects than just what we're seeing at face value. And I believe this really is the start of a massive, massive boost for momentum for both that off-chain side, but also that on-chain side on Hedera.
I do like the fact that there's going to be new investors that are going to get some skin in the game, and there's nothing like some skin in the game that will make you go and dig further, go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And there's so many things that are exciting about Hedera that are going on that I think you're just going to get a lot more people that are passionate just coming from that traditional investment base rather than from the crypto base. I do want to get into one other thing that I mentioned in my show with Brady the other day. We had the HBAR DeFi Corner, and it goes back to these basket ETFs. One of the things that I noticed is that in the one basketed ETF for ProShares, for example, you have Bitcoin at 30%, you have Ethereum at 20%, and you have HBAR at just over 1%. So if you look at those ratios compared to the market caps, what we find is the market cap ratio for the HBAR is, I think, 274 to 1, or at least that was the other day. It might be around 250 to 1 for Bitcoin and 64 to 1 for Ethereum. So those are much smaller ratios than what we're seeing in these basketed ETFs. So if you take the capital that's going into those funds, what you'll see is the HBAR will start to outperform. Now, I'm not sure how everything's going to work, but it was something that I noticed. The other thing that's exciting is today we're kind of celebrating HBAR moving into the traditional space, into a traditional wrapper in the form of an ETF. But we're also seeing it the other way, where we're seeing traditional assets moving into the DeFi space. We're looking at bringing stocks and bonds through Swarm over to Saucerswap. We're looking at precious metals. We're looking at real estate through Red Swan. What are your thoughts on that movement of bringing some of these traditional assets over to the DeFi space?
Definitely. I think this marks, the next natural step in the evolution of these DeFi protocols. The first ones were just trading within the sort of framework that we had, within crypto. So being just standard cryptocurrency assets and the yields associated with them, operating within what we knew and what we believed we were allowed to do. But with this sort of tailwind that we've got in the US and well beyond at this point, there is now this room for tokenized stocks and other kinds of tokenized assets to come online. And that is exactly what these next generation of DeFi protocols will be catering to, and specifically the ones on the Hedera network. It's my firm belief that Hedera, the native power of Hedera, the native institutional grade properties of Hedera, such as fair ordering, which enables no MEV, no front running, alongside fixed fees, and the council itself, I firmly believe those characteristics put Hedera in a position where it is simply best in class to attract these sort of institutional grade DeFi protocols and the liquidity associated with them. As you mentioned, this is kind of the start of that next generation. And we're gonna see, existing protocols be a part of that, and also these new ones that are coming online. So a lot of exciting things to come. There's gonna be new types of financial instruments, new ways of exploring and trading your capital, such as perps and high frequency trading dexes, or ones that are built for high frequency traders rather. And so we really are, I think, going to have a sort of paradigm shift in how people look at DeFi on Hedera, and the DeFi protocols that are already here, of course, can be a massive part of that too.
The other thing that I'm excited about is what we're seeing coming out of drops. So you're going to be able to start to use the Hedera version of USDC in things like convenience stores for buying your gas, for buying coffee, things along those lines. And whether it's people getting rewards in the DeFi space or just taking profits in the form of USDC, you don't necessarily have to offboard like you did before, as you mentioned, through Binance or crypto.com, going to US dollars and putting those into your bank account. You can just send them over to your drop account or your drop wallet, and you can use them to buy things in the real world right away. So I thought that was pretty cool. Some news that came out recently as well. Zep, I want to give you one last chance if there's anything else you want to touch on. I know we also had some big news around staking that came out recently. Do you have anything else for us?
It seems that when something happens on Hedera, a million other things happen at the same time. We sort of have these clusters of momentum, which actually work very well when it comes to sort of capturing that attention. And we had, like you mentioned, the relaunch of HBAR staking to a degree which is interesting to people, to the community, that's going to support the community. We had these multiple USGC listings. And today, of course, we had the HBAR ETF itself. And for me, as I've briefly mentioned in this call, what I'm most interested in is the new institutional grade DeFi protocols that are emerging, but also the high volume of enterprise use cases and institutional use cases that we know we have. Things like Equity Lab, and the ones that will continue to build as these core builders in the field of sort of agentic verification, or rather verifying the data that those AI agents and LLMs are trained on. So as we know, there's always a lot going on. It just so happens that this week has been a crazy one for that, and I don't really anticipate that slowing down. So great to be back on the show. We got to have a deeper discussion on the institutional DeFi side, I think, or rather the institutional grade DeFi side, but a lot of stuff to be excited about, and great to be back here. Thanks, Brandon.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and there can't be as much of a gap between the next time we have you on. I certainly want to get you back as soon as possible. Pass on my congratulations for everybody that worked on this ETF, because it seems like it's being very successful so far. For all the HBARbarians out there, go check out your brokerage account, see if you have access to this. I know it's on Fidelity, so that's good to see. Congratulations to all the HBARbarians out there. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday.